Order, we're recording okay here? Good. Call the meeting to order for Monday, May 21st, 2018, Wicomico County Council. This is an open budget work session. I'd like to start the meeting if we could with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is the State's Attorney's Office, which is budget line number 04. We have the State's Attorney. If you could state your name and title for the public, that would be great. Thanks.
Certainly, thank you. Jamie Dykes, ad interim State's Attorney for Wicomico County.
Thank you. I guess what we do is like lead off with you as far as what you're seeing this year, your priorities, and then we'll start with questions after that,
Okay.
if you like.
I want to explain a little bit about how the office works. I'm sure you've been educated over the years, but some things that I think we do differently than most other counties on the Lower Shore are that I have all of my felony prosecutors and one of my district court prosecutors is on call 24/7. We are reviewing search warrants in the middle of the night, going to those search warrant services if necessary. If a judge can't be found, sometimes they'll answer the state's attorney's call quicker than they will a law enforcement officers. We are going to the hospital on serious physical abuses of very young children, on all baby deaths, because all of those are suspicious until they've had an autopsy and proven otherwise. We are attending all homicides any time of the day or night, and other violent crimes as necessary. So if we have a rash of home invasions or burglaries, we're going to be out with law enforcement discussing that, helping them work through that, and providing legal advice. I went out recently on a Friday night at about 10 o'clock to the emergency department. We had, in the 24 hours preceding that, 8 overdoses to help see if we could identify a source of that bad drug.
You said there was 8 overdoses?
8 overdoses in one 24-hour period.
Now, is that what you go to as a state's attorney, or is that what you go through as part of the cooperation with the COAT program?
So no, that's a state's attorney. When COAT is dispatched to go out, state's attorneys don't go to that. We would actually probably interfere with that process. So it was, we get notifications. I get notifications of overdoses on my phone. And it's not unusual to have 3 or 4 a week, but certainly 8 in a 24-hour period was highly concerning. They've leveled off since then. What the task force is doing is, there was a recent case that came down that reversed a conviction that Worcester County had gotten for an opioid death, and they charged it as a manslaughter. I don't know where the future is going, but I'm not prepared to put our resources there when we haven't had a positive affirmative decision from the appeals courts. What we're finding is most effective is going after the dealers on dealer-related charges. They're going to get more time on a felony drug offense than they are a death. But if we can prove that causal connection between the death and the distribution of that drug, we'll go after it. It's just awfully hard. Nobody talks. The victim doesn't talk, the family doesn't talk, and they don't have to because of the Good Samaritan law.
Amy, are these opioid overdoses or heroin overdoses all combined, or is it just basically opioid?
It's hard to tell without a blood test or some kind of test.
So they could be heroin overdoses.
It could be heroin, it could be fentanyl. What we've seen, ironically, in a couple cases, when I've reviewed the autopsy reports, is we're seeing cocaine where we have from the family a history of cocaine use, but it's been laced with fentanyl. We're also seeing or there's a lot of talk with some who will speak with us, overdose victims, about K2 and K2, and they are, the ironic thing is they're positively responding to Narcan.
What is K2?
I'm sorry. It's synthetic marijuana. That it's spice, K2.
The stuff that you buy at gas stations?
Yes, yes.
And it keeps changing the name when they say it's illegal?
Yeah, the composition, they're changing what, in the
Is
feds
that
are
a
having.
generic name, K2, or is that a
Yes.
brand now?
No, it's a generic,
Okay.
generic name.
So you're saying, when you're saying this isn't necessarily prescription opioids that's causing the overdoses? It's, could be a
Illegal.
combination of many things that's causing it.
Yes, yes, and I don't know, Lori Brewster would be the best person to ask, but I don't know that I don't know of an overdose that we've had that is on legally prescribed opioids. I don't think that that's happening, because they're more controlled,
Right.
The dosage.
It's one, to not interrupt you in your explanation, but you say they're on time, they're on call. Do you put one person on call Monday night, another person on call Tuesday night? Is that how you do it, or,
No,
and do they get comp time, I guess?
they do not get comp time.
They do not get-
And quite frankly, the caseloads don't allow them to take time. They will, my people are incredibly dedicated. It's, they're all there for the right reason. I couldn't have walked into a better team of committed people. I've changed the structure a little bit. So as opposed to having a deputy, I have 3 senior assistant state's attorneys who are assigned to my circuit court division. And each one of them, like Trish, everybody knows Trish, I'm sure. Trish leads the gang, gun, and drug team. Karen Dean leads what I call, for lack of a better word, is like the special victims unit. She does all the child abuse, all the domestic violence. She'll do arsons just because they're a different animal in and of themselves. And usually there's a domestic related component to that. Elder abuse and big financial crime. And then Kristen Schultz handles all other violent crime, homicides, rapes, robberies, home invasions, bank robberies. So I've split it out that way because I've always been a proponent of specialization, right? Like, I'm gonna be better at trying child abuse cases if I dive into those and I focus all my attention on those. I'm gonna be really good at those. And that's what I want for my teams. Now, eventually, I'd love for those who want to broaden their experience to trade teams and that sort of thing. But I feel like we best serve the public that way. And unfortunately, there are enough of all of those crimes to go around.
You're not gonna run out anytime soon.
So, did I answer your question, Jeff?
Yeah,
Okay.
you did.
Yeah, when I was a paramedic on the street, I unfortunately had a lot of cases involving children, and she was one of the state's attorney that I always saw. So she's got many years of experience.
Thanks, Larry. Yeah, it's, our jobs are really rewarding, but they're really stressful.
Yeah,
at
it's
this end.
sad at times.
It's,
John?
Do you have enough money?
so I would, let me back up by saying that the state's attorney's office has never kept their own statistics. We've relied on the courts and law enforcement. Relying on law enforcement is the wrong measure because, like we found last year, we had, how many homicides? Was it 6 homicides last summer? But that resulted in 6 + 5 + 2 is 13. That resulted in 13 trials for us. It's 1 homicide, but if you have 7 co-defendants, that's 7 trials. And we had 1 homicide where it was 3 co-defendants, so that is 3 trials for us. I think I need another person. I think that I need a lot more, but having only been in for 5 months, I'm not coming to you asking for the sun and the moon and the stars, because quite frankly, I can't validate that with numbers. I want to validate that in some way with numbers. But I need 1 person, 1 more. And as I asked the county exec, I would like to boost a few of my people's salaries because they're, in my estimation as a state's attorney, kind of off kilter. They don't total more than $20,000 in increases that I had asked, but was not.
How many do you have?
How many people?
Attorneys, yeah.
Attorneys, including myself, I have 18 attorneys.
18.
I have 18 administrative staff.
What's their average salary?
I don't know what the average is. I have one that's on a grant, who's making quite a bit more than the average. Richard Catlin's been there 30 years, so he's making quite a bit. And then we go down to starting salary, which is about 58. In order to level out caseloads and make it manageable for my people so that they can attend trainings and can take some vacation time, I need one more person.
Well, I'm sure that when you do need it, you'll come back.
Yeah. I will treat that as an invitation.
So how much of this funding do
me?
you get? Jamie?
Of course, the other question is, what resources, and I know personnel are not the resources that you could cut, but what other resources do you have that you could possibly cut? Are your computers up to date? Are your programs up to date?
So we went, there's a move towards paperless.
All right.
So we were all required to go to start using MDEC. The office has lagged behind in that respect because we all still have paper files. And part of that is a crutch. You know, it's hard for us to separate, but we don't have the software that we would need, the full Adobe version, and that's gonna cost at least $300 a machine.
Per computer.
To have, and actually, I think it's closer to 4, but, I'm sorry, I don't have that figure right off the top of my head. But all the hardware computer stuff, I think we're okay.
Okay.
I think we're okay. The software, I have a bigger question. We're working with Wor-Wic, so that they can help us identify those needs.
Okay, so facilities, you're okay then?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, Councilman Hall mentioned resources, and I wanted to ask you, and I'm trying to go through here to see what your figure is. How much of your salaries comes from the state of Maryland? I know you mentioned a grant, which is probably a federal grant. But how
It is,
much?
no, it's a state grant.
It is a state
It's a state grant. That's the only,
You get nothing else from the state?
no, no, I don't believe so.
You don't believe so?
I'm pretty sure not. I mean, I've never heard of us getting something from the state, and I don't think there's any reimbursement.
It's interesting how it all falls back on the
Right,
county.
because we're the state, but it is the county's
Okay.
full obligation.
That was my question.
As far as I understand it.
Outside of grants, I guess.
So if you had an extra attorney, where would that person be focused on?
Gun crime. So we have our Safe Streets, our grant person, who is mostly gang crime, but that's differentiated from gun crime. If we look at all of our crimes of violence, it's rare not to see a gun used. And most of the time, that gun's illegal. Identifying and consistency of prosecution in guns, which I think we have, but to have one person dedicated to that, I think that's to help that piece.
Do you think even if you had the software, you mentioned that it's kind of a crutch for a lot of the attorneys, would they actually switch over to paperless, or?
I would like to start, they've never been forced, to do that. I would like one person, including myself, to start that way, and then we'd have a better idea of, to convince the others that it's the right thing to do. People would also need training on Adobe and that sort of thing. I mean, we went seamless or we went paperless, but we're not where we should be yet.
Is that a mandate, or is that just a best practice?
No, it's mandated that all the filings be PDF, paperless. And so we've done that, but we've not let go
But you
of
still
paper.
print them
Right, and I think part of that was, we didn't know how to, and I'm not sure how much effort was put into that,
Us old guys like that.
so. See,
Do you use tough books, or do you have laptops that you take on the scene, or do you take any computers with you to do your paperwork there?
We all have laptops that we have the ability to use in court. Nobody's quite used them yet. But on scene, most of the time, if we're at the police department, we're reviewing search warrants on their computer screen. It's not most of anything that we would need right then and there. Our investigators have tough books, and they have the connection, and they use that quite a bit, but as attorneys, we don't.
I see in here you're getting one more car. Is that, could you talk about that some?
What's that?
Could you just?
Tell you about the need? So Tracy Kilgore is our second investigator. She is driving an old Crown Vic. I'm not sure what year it is, but it has nearly 300,000 miles.
How many?
200.
300?
2005.
Yeah.
It's old.
Okay.
Is it an old police car?
Yes.
It's got 245,000 miles.
So it's
Sounds like our vehicles here.
yeah. And she, picks up witnesses and victims, and at some point it becomes a safety.
And I saw extradition. What is that? I know what it is, but why would you guys be involved in that and need funding?
We have to arrange and pay for the extraditions. We used to use local people, and then over time got so great, so we use a contract service that's more reasonable, but we are responsible for extraditions.
Okay, and I didn't know if that was a need for the car as well to do extraditions
So in fact, they're on one today, so, but, yes, yeah,
with the county car,
yes.
state car, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's county card.
When you do an extradition, you send a deputy, you pay a deputy to do that?
No, our investigators are going to do that extradition, but most of the time we contract them. This person is such a safety risk that the contract company wouldn't, they just weren't willing to assume that risk.
So you have sworn officers that go and pick them up?
Yes, yes.
But doesn't the sheriff's department do some of that too?
They do. Sometimes we arrange, especially if it's very close. And they were asked to do this one, but couldn't work out the scheduling.
Do
Or
you have to reimburse the sheriff's department when you do it?
we would, yes. That would have been the arrangement, yes.
Yeah, revenue is about 104,000. It's a grant, a program, adult abuse, I guess. What is that for and
It
from?
should be Safe Streets.
That's adult drug program is how it is.
So, yeah.
So that's Safe Streets, is it?
That's Safe Streets that's now been, the governor changed the name to EMSIN. I can't tell you what that acronym stands for, but it is for prosecutor's salary that sort of it helps administer that program with Salisbury Police Department.
Okay.
I was watching PAC 14 the other day, and they were talking about the county's most wanted, and they said that they would extradite this person from Virginia or Delaware. So at some point in time during I guess it's a decision on how important it is. Is that what that is?
It's a cost benefit. So every extradition comes across my desk. So it's, I frequently say Maryland only, because if it's a drug offense, the maximum penalty they're gonna get is 12 months. If it's a simple possession, a misdemeanor. So it's always a cost benefit. So I can do Maryland only, or only the states surrounding Maryland, but it is always, a cost benefit.
So if you do Maryland only and they get picked up in Delaware, it pops up on their screen that they're wanted, does that mean you won't go get them?
So, unless they waive, they could waive
So you
extradition.
probably won't.
Right, right.
Yeah.
They, but it is, simple traffic offenses.
Yeah,
It's,
Okay, I understand.
is the juice worth the squeeze? So to speak.
Any questions? No?
We have a little thing called contingency that, I guess, like you said with John, take that invitation. But I know when Matt first got, elected as state's attorney, there was, I think, something missed or something in the budget. So, I think your budget's pretty conservative the way it looks, and appreciate that.
Yeah, of
But
course.
if you run into a problem, where we're at.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So, anything further?
Anything else, anybody?
Good.
We're good?
I would like, I haven't been to the new state's attorney's office. I'd like a tour.
Well, why don't we arrange that?
That's what I'm asking. And
Okay.
maybe the courthouse
Give
again.
you an idea how you can get it.
May I grab my
I'm
phone?
claustrophobic.
Is there a day or day of the week or time of the day
I like
that suits?
mornings better.
You like mornings? How about Friday, June 1st?
And budget session.
Okay.
I got budget
How about
session.
after budget?
After
When's a
budget.
good date after the budget?
Running in the summer.
There you go.
I've been there.
There you go.
You don't have to do it now. We're holding you up.
Okay.
I'll call you or send me an
And-
email or something. And
We'll arrange it, absolutely.
then maybe others can go if they wish.
I will take the opportunity to mention that we are, for future planning, we are at max capacity. So we're in, if we ever get another attorney, or when we get another attorney position, I've changed our evidence room. We are relocating that to a smaller closet, which we will secure, of course, but after that, we are at max capacity upstairs.
This is the building on Main Street?
Yes.
That we just put
The new
together a few
building.
years ago?
Yes. Now, so the state's attorney's office occupies the second floor. The CAC occupies the bottom floor.
I thought they were somewhere else, like the Holly Center in that area.
They used to be, but when the new state's attorney's office was renovated, they were put on the bottom floor. So I just throw that out there as
Do
something.
they
to
need to
on
be
the
in
radar.
the same building?
They don't need to be.
And I'm just thinking for the future, if you
And
need
I
more
would-
office space.
And, my heart's in the CAC, I would never want to, hurt them in any fashion, but I think everyone knows as we, attend advisory board meetings, I think everybody knows that it's a matter of time, before a change would need to be made.
You need to expand, I understand.
Unless crime goes down. Then we can reduce
I
it.
wish I were a little more hopeful than you. It's wild. I looked up in preparation for today, and I just hadn't taken the opportunity to do it before. Went to neighborhoodscout.com. I don't know if anybody's ever been there. Salisbury has a crime index of 2, which means that only 2% of reporting communities are more safe.
Jamie, tell me,
Yeah, I've seen that site
2%
before.
or more safe. Okay.
of your 8 overdoses last week, how many were fatalities?
So one of them went to ICU. I think there was more to that, but I don't believe that person died.
So the rest of them, we give them Narcan and they're back on the streets again?
And now Larry might know, there's a push to have EMS leave Narcan behind and train.
I haven't
people
heard that
on
one yet.
scene. So that's sort of time.
Can you repeat that? What did you say?
EMS, when they respond to an overdose, even if someone refuses service, so EMS injects them with Narcan, they come back and they're great, they refuse service, but EMS, I don't think that it's been signed off on, but there is a push to have EMS leave Narcan behind, another dose, and then to teach people how to administer it,
I haven't heard that one yet.
so.
About the building, are we leasing the downstairs? Or
Yes, there
We are
is-
leasing that?
Yes, it's my belief that the Department of Social Services, which I suppose is DHR still, I'm not sure, writes a check to the county for just over $100,000 a year.
Okay, that's probably in our revenue, I'd have to look that up, I guess, though.
Yeah, it's.
The,
I see it will be.
Well, it's not in theirs, but it would be, there's a separate revenue file. It's a little confusing.
I didn't know if the numbers would be in
So, I
there.
mean, worst came to worst, then we might use that space down there instead of leasing it out. We might use that space downstairs
Yes.
if you want to expand.
I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what I was saying about relocating
The
CAC.
CAC.
do you know if space is available where they came from?
So no, they came from the Holly Center.
They got one of those quads?
Yes. I believe the Deputy Director of Administration, Wayne, mentioned a potential, solution that he had in mind. I think.
There's a big benefit to them being there, right? In that
Yes.
building, or at least close.
Yes, it is, because having everyone co-located, and that seamless communication, oftentimes if an interview was going on downstairs and we had a child disclose, I would go downstairs, watch the interview, be able to assist, at that level, which is, and Karen does that also, to be able to assist in that, there is a great deal of value to that, so. Okay. Thank you,
Great.
gentlemen.
Thanks for coming in.
Of course, of course.
You did a good job.
Thank you.
The first budget, isn't it?
It's interesting. Have a good day.
You too. Steve, I found revenue to be very difficult to find.
We can find out where that's located.
Yeah, the revenue PDF file they sent us is like, sort of like a hodgepodge unless I'm missing something. I mean, initially, it's very easy to find as far as its property taxes, property tax income. But then it seems like it's all across the board. But it could just be that I'm not really familiar with how to read it, right?
I know we're working with finance on the issue, revenue issue with which you're familiar, but we're also going to look at some of these other things and maybe with an eye towards providing more clarity.
Yeah, it's like on one page, you have roads department revenue, city operation costs, drug court, home detention, sheriff's miscellaneous detention center. And those, that's all on one sheet. And like when I'm trying to find out what the income is for the state's attorney's office for the county from that building, I don't know where to look.
We'll take a closer look at it.
Okay. And I noticed that in the budget, they're talking about elected salaries, but in the proposed salaries, there's about a $13,000 difference that says is effective July 1st, 2018. So I'm wondering why that isn't in the budget itself.
Is that for the state's attorney?
It's in the it's in the fiscal year 19 proposed salary PDF file.
Yeah, that. So,
The fifth sheet on the PDF file. And that's under the fiscal year 19 proposed salaries. Well, that's how I've labeled it. But it is proposed salaries. Did you find it,
do
Levin?
we know where it is in the hard copy by any chance?
No.
Okay. Look on the shared drive.
It is the sheet that lists every single salary of each individual position.
I'm familiar with that, but we don't have it with us. So what's the question exactly?
Why it states that the fiscal year 19 budget line item, that there is a definite increase effective July 1st, 2018. It's sort of off to the side after the 2% COLA salary increase notification.
Okay.
You wanna look at it?
Yeah, we'll have something for you.
Right here. This is the page. This is what's in the budget, but this is what's been noted on the side. Okay?
I thought I downloaded the budget on PDF, but I can't find it.
Got it.
It's Laura off.
Did the salary study.
Everybody ready to move on? I know what Ray is here. If you,
Oh, he's here, okay. He said he'll come in, but he's waiting on somebody.
Okay.
He's joining him.
all right. Hello, Ray.
Okay, I'm gonna wing it. How are you? Good morning, everyone. So Jennifer Sand's on her way up, but
What is her name so I can tell Pat Fortin?
Jennifer Sand,
Jennifer Sand.
yes.
How's your morning going?
Wonderful, it's not a Monday.
It's not a Monday. It's not a Monday.
It doesn't feel like it yet, anyway. We'll see how it goes. So far, so good.
And you're not in Annapolis.
I'm not in Annapolis, but lately, being in Annapolis was good because that was for bill signings.
Are we tougher on you than Annapolis is? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, it depends on the day. Depends on the day and the topic.
Ray, if you want to wait for someone to come in, then we're okay with that.
Well, I'm not sure. I left without her because I thought she was off today. And I got an email and a text message. I was waiting for you. Where'd you go? So I wasn't, maybe it is a Monday. I wasn't paying good enough attention. She's off tomorrow. But new Outlook calendar, it kind of blends together. It doesn't show up as well as, or it doesn't show up like it did before.
On your phone you're talking about?
Yeah, it just kind of all runs together. And,
I haven't mastered that yet.
Ours works pretty well. I don't know if there's something we do that makes it a little easier. Ours comes up like that.
Yeah. See, mine's coming up differently now, and I'm gonna have to go back and check it. We get this 360 stuff, and so it comes up like this, and you get this list at the bottom of stuff. So I saw this AL for Jennifer, and it just flowed right into it. So I looked and said, "Okay, she's off.
Yeah.
That's tomorrow."
If you want to start, Ray,
Yeah,
feel
go ahead.
comfortable. Go ahead. We usually let you go ahead and open up with where you are and what you're looking for.
Okay, well, I shared a budget presentation with you, I guess, end of February, and had a follow-up conversation and submitted a revised budget that includes actually everything we're looking for and needing. I think the biggest part of the budget situation is the fact that last year we contracted with an external entity, consulting firm, Evergreen, that's actually worked with a number of the community colleges in Maryland to do a compensation study. And we found that we had a significant shortfall across the board. We knew that, which is one of the reasons that we went out to find out, but we wanted to find out the significance of it. Last year in the budget process, we moved forward with an increase that got us to 90% compa ratio, not 100%. To get to 100% would have cost an additional $500,000. And we just didn't think that was appropriate at that time. In looking at this year's budget and moving forward, we're trying to make up some of that. We're still not going to get all the way there. 78% of our employees are below the midpoint. And with the revised compensation package that's in this year's budget, our faculty salaries, starting salary, master's degree, and 2 years experience is moving to $42,769. That's less than the public school faculty, public school teacher in Wicomico County coming out of high school with the ink still wet on their diploma. The starting salary is $44,202, and I'm not suggesting that's high, but I'm just trying to show it's not high by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it's very comparable to to Worcester and Somerset County salaries, and I'm assuming they're going up as well. So we're behind even the public schools, and we require a master's and 2 years' experience. That kind of is indicative of the situation we're dealing with. Also, this past year, we had the highest percent of turnover among any of the community colleges, 14.5%. The average, the mean was 7.8% among the community colleges. So, you know, we're seeing, as the market has improved, we're losing people left and right. And we just need to do something
Why?
to manage that. Why?
Salaries?
Salaries, that's when we do, and every employee is asked why they're leaving. There's a survey that's conducted, and for the most part, it's compensation.
Yeah, I've known several professors from Salisbury University leave the university and go to Wor-Wic in years past. I don't know if that's still going on or not.
Haven't had too many. In fact, we're losing them the other way.
Really?
Yeah, we've lost several. Great young math faculty member we lost to SU just this past year. I can't think of anybody we brought in from SU in quite some time.
Roy, along the same line, the unions I know are trying to make inroads and have been the past couple of years. And we've been very fortunate, I think, from the state level. Is it still a looming issue?
Yeah, honestly, at the beginning of this session, the community college presidents and board chairs met with Mike Miller, and he told us to brace ourselves. It was going to happen this year. Now, there were some things that occurred during the year that made that a little more challenging for the unions to move forward, and frankly, the bill was pulled in the Senate this year. But this was the fifth consecutive year where a collective bargaining bill had been submitted. And I actually lead the presidents in the fight against the unions. Some can't because they already have unions on their campus. 4 institutions have some form of unions. Montgomery's the only school that's fully unionized. And, but we've been able to fight that off pretty rigorously, in part because we've shown them that the cost for unionization per unit is about $100,000 just to set it up. That's not what you're dealing with. In the most recent bill, there were 5 different groups that could unionize within the community college structure. So it's always a challenge, and one of the biggest areas that they're looking for these days are with adjuncts, with part-time instructors. Most of our part-time instructors work other jobs. Hopefully they wouldn't be interested, but it could be a very big long-term expense.
What percentage do you have that are adjunct professors?
Well, it's a great question. I'm not sure I know exactly. I can tell you that we have about 250 full-time standard positions, but we have 700 W-2s annually, and most of that is with adjuncts. HB1, with the passage of HB1, that's had a profound impact on that, because prior to HB1, we didn't have to monitor the leave time, sick time, working hours of all those other people who weren't standard employees. But now everybody comes into that classification, and we have to watch their hours, because even adjuncts qualify now for sick and safe leave.
Right.
So there's 700 W-2s that we have, but most of them obviously are part-time, and most of those are adjuncts.
Well, I know you spend a lot of time in Annapolis, and you should be commended for that. This budget thing, is that going to rear its head again next year? The union?
Oh, every year. Yeah, it's not going away.
I figured you would know.
Yeah. In fact, SEIU, which is the union that is the most active in this particular arena with the community colleges, is supporting some candidates who would be more favorable to them and running against sitting senators.
On the state. Do you have funding in your budget for you to spend time in Annapolis?
Well, that's part of my job.
Yeah.
Obviously, advocacy, and also looking at monitoring what's going on. I've been on the legislative committee every year since I've been president, the last 18 years, and I read every bill that comes through, and that's how I spend my Sunday afternoons during session. We had over 200 bills that affected us directly this past session.
And that's where your attorney skills come in, reading and interpreting those bills.
That's exactly right, and sometimes getting the opportunity to redraft them.
Right.
Dr. Boy, I know there's been some heartburn with our neighbors to the east about our increased budget and them being able to match. Can you explain how that works, and will they be able to do that?
Well, can they? Sure. I mean, they have a $200 million budget, and the total increase to them is $146,000. I can't imagine that that's a big lift for them. But, you know,
They think so.
they think so. And their total budget share is among the lowest in the state, as it is. So on a $200 million budget, I don't see an issue
And
there.
you say that theirs is gonna be what now?
Their total increase to our budget is $146,050.
If we approve this budget?
If we approve this budget,
Okay, 146,000.
$146,050.
Okay, and, I mean, have you lobbied them for this? You're us?
Of course. It's kind of like the question Larry just asked me, you know, it's part of my job.
It was a dumb question, right?
No, it wasn't.
So what
there-
happens if they decide they don't wanna do that?
Well, if you approve the budget and they don't, and this has happened 3 other times, twice they didn't approve the budget that you approved, once you didn't approve the budget that they approved. In each of those occasions, we've had a differential tuition rate between the two counties.
That's, I remember that now.
And the dollar figure increase to Wicomico, to Worcester County would be $8 a credit hour, because they'd also have to make up the loss of state revenue that we're getting from the governor's request to hold tuition at 2%. So because we wouldn't be able to do that, they're gonna have to make that up as well. So it'd be
It was $8.
it's $8, yep.
It would cost their students $8 more.
Their students $8 more per credit
To
hour,
go to school.
yes. For $150,000. That seems a little strange, 146.50, excuse me.
So what percentage increase in salary would this amended, you know,
The total budget package is a 5% increase in salary. Part of that is a 2% range shift. That's not in addition to, that's a range shift of 2%, kind of to maintain the market position. And then the balance of it is a salary increase to move us closer to 100% compa ratio. 78% of our employees are below midpoint. And midpoint is set as market average.
So that would be the result of, I guess it was, your initial ask was about $151,000 increase, I guess that we got back in.
To you,
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, and then we got a second ask,
Right.
that was an additional, what, 213,000?
Right,
increase.
300,000 between the two counties.
Yeah, so the second ask was 300,000 between the two counties?
Yeah, and that's about 2% salary increase.
All right.
So it would come from a 3% to a 5% overall.
All right. How much would tuition have to go up to be 300,000?
$6
$6
A
a
credit hour.
credit hour for both Worcester and Wycomico?
for all
That was-
students, yes. And, you know, obviously that's an option. The reason it goes up 6 is because we lose the governor's money that I mentioned, $53,000. And so we're making up that in addition to the 300,000 shortfall. So we're making up 353,000.
350,000.
So what is a credit hour now?
Credit hour is 110 in this budget,
10?
yes.
How's that compared to Salisbury University?
Well,
Well,
doesn't.
No, I mean, what is theirs, do you know?
I don't. We have a goal to be at 40% of the state four-year institution. We shouldn't be the same, clearly.
Right.
Community
It's
college
always
mission is
cheaper,
different, completely different. I really don't know what theirs is. We have among the lowest tuition rates in the state. Per credit hour, it's the second lowest. Cumulative, meaning at 15 credits, it's the third lowest. And that's because of fees, the way fees are structured. If you add the tuition and fees together, some are per credit hour fees at some institutions and some are fixed fees. So when it's calculated out, We're the third lowest on one scale and the second lowest on another.
And my question for the SU comparison would be that going to Wor-Wic, you get more bang for the buck.
Oh, absolutely.
And I did want to go back to the 78% of employees are below midpoint. Do you have a comparison chart as compared to other community colleges? How do they stand? What are their
Well-
percentage points?
What Evergreen did for us is survey all the other community colleges, 13 of which responded, and Deltec, and Salisbury UMES, and all 3 county boards of ed, and all 3 county governments, so that we could determine what market share is for our jobs and our roles. And they came up with this analysis of where we are. So do I have a number of what the, no, but I know that based on this study, we're lower than everybody else, so my presumption is that we have a higher percent below midpoint.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had some kind of chart to look at to
No,
compare it.
not with that, no.
Okay.
Under the state tuition subsidy law that was just passed, that doesn't mandate low tuition or anything like that, does it? I mean, it sets a 5,000 cap per student, something like that, but it doesn't
It
control your
fixes, it
tuition.
also has a limit on tuition increases
Okay,
at 4%
okay.
a year for a 3-year period, and that provision sunsets. We don't know what's going to be replaced by that.
Okay.
So that will take effect in fiscal year 19.
So that bill takes effect for your next school year?
I'm sorry, it
Is that
takes
right?
effect fall of 19, fiscal year 20. Is that right? Yes, fiscal year 20. I'm in too many fiscal years.
Yeah. So that bill doesn't take effect for the
does
school
not.
year of this fall?
Correct,
It does for a year from now?
right.
Okay, gotcha.
But it will impact our budget tuition increase for next year, even though we can't enroll anybody until the following fall. The limitation will begin.
Oh, the 4%
in the next budget,
limitation
in the next
comes
year.
for this coming school year?
Not in this budget cycle, but for
Okay,
the
next-
following,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, so, okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Would it be possible at some time, you don't have to do it now, to get a presentation on the governor's proposal and how it would affect Wor-Wic?
Yeah, I can, well,
Because, I mean, I think that would help us in the future for
okay,
budget.
I can help you understand what was in the bill. And then it's going to take a while to figure out how it's going to be
Some
applied.
people thinking they're going to go to college for free.
Well, they will. A lot of people will. The governor, the bill that the governor signed last week, a week before, provides $15 million a year. We estimated that it would need $30 million in Maryland. So it's about
That you
half the
would
amount they would need to meet the, for the people who would be eligible for the criteria. So the criteria is a 2.3 high school grade point average and single-family adjusted family income at 100,000, two-family adjusted family income at 150,000 adjusted family income. Maintain a 2.5 grade point average in college, and if you don't, in order to retain it, you need to stay in Maryland 2 years after you graduate.
So,
That's your provision, Joe. You like that? Not a bad provision. The only problem is the cost of implementing.
yeah.
I mean, you have to monitor them and figure that out. And that's, I never objected to the provision. It's just the cost of monitoring.
Seems to me to be pretty simple, they send a W-2 form.
Well, that would be great, but they don't send it to us, and once they leave us, I don't know where they are. Yeah, I mean, but if the state's tracking it, that's easier, because they can see where the people are, where they're coming from, and because they have to pay their taxes. Yeah, and it's high school graduates, but they also have 24 months in which to enroll after they graduate.
So, I mean, I guess this is not taking effect in the fall. We
No.
probably have some time to talk about it. But my question was how this interacts with the Wicomico program, because that's supposed to be last dollar, and ours is supposed to be last dollar.
Right.
I was getting to that.
Which last dollar's you know, I mean, it seems that there's,
Funny you should ask, I've asked the same question.
yeah, so, yeah,
Well,
I mean, so basically, you
And I
know,
don't disagree. I think I know where you're going, and I don't disagree with you. What I would hope is that you continue to fund the students who are currently in the program and the ones who enroll this fall, and until they sunset out, but I wouldn't recommend continuing it.
sure, okay, that makes sense. But my thoughts were it was gonna happen in the fall, so it might
Right.
affect this, but that.
No,
that-
it doesn't
so-
affect this budget. And actually, there's no budget request this year, as you're also aware, to support that particular program.
What about the workforce development that was discussed briefly and then sort of abandoned? Where were we with that?
Well, we found another source for that for the immediate term.
Okay,
There's more monies that have become available and can address that through the Workforce Investment Board.
okay.
So my concern was to implement an additional $50,000 or whatever dollar figure program. We would be serving the same population and it might not be utilized, and I didn't want to start a program where the dollars wouldn't be needed or utilized. So we've had two other options right now to address that workforce need.
Okay.
Prospectively, this program that you currently have, the Wicomico Economic Impact Scholarship, could transition to something like that and be able to help more people. But something I failed to mention, Larry, which is why a presentation would be helpful in the future, is that students who graduate and qualify for the Community College Promise Program, the Maryland Community College Promise Program, can also use it for non-credit licensure certifications, things that lead directly into jobs. So they could actually come out of high school, trades. They could come out of high school and go into one of our non-credit programs. The audience it doesn't touch are the non-high school graduates. And just let me help you understand, we're only talking about potentially, not today, but potentially when we see this fully implemented, 20% of our students. Because that's the ones who come directly out of high school. So, 80% of our students are older, not coming directly out of high school, so it doesn't affect our entire student body by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, our average age of credit students is 25, and of non-credit students is 40.
This is off the subject a little bit of what we're talking about, but the ones that are coming directly from high school to Wor-Wic, are they ready? Are they ready for college? I mean, we've heard.
I know, you hear a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
There have been changes that have taken place in Maryland to help students become more college ready. But the implementation of that, it was a bill that was passed in 2013. And again, when I talk to you about some of these things, it's like, okay, that starts with the ninth graders in 2014, and we should just start seeing the effects of improvement in this particular arena. So what that bill required was that every high school graduate has 4 years of high school math. That's one of the biggest issues. They didn't have to take math in their senior year, and when they came to us and were assessed for their math skills, they weren't. They lost it. They lost the skill, and they weren't quite ready. So that was the biggest deficit. The other thing was that the high schools, the exit mandate for high schools was not equivalent to the college entrance needs. Never was until 2013. So when you say, were they ready? Well, they were ready for something. Were they ready for college? Not necessarily, but that wasn't what it was designed to do. So again, when the bill passed in 2013, we start to see the implementation. My expectation is we're going to see students more college ready. One other piece of that bill is they have a transitions course that they have to take in the 12th grade. So in 11th grade, they're assessed for college readiness, and if they're not ready, they take a transitions course, which is equivalent to our developmental education in English and math. And when they complete that, they should be college ready. So are they today? Well, we've had as many as 70% of our students needing developmental coursework. Were they supposed to be college ready? Not necessarily. From this point forward, I expect them to be college ready. That's what I'm looking for.
When President Cannon and I were on stage with you during the graduation, I noticed this year and also noticed last year that there were older graduates walking across that stage, 30 plus. I think I knew one that was at least in his 40s. And last year, it struck me too when we were working on this economic development scholarship and now the governor's scholarship. There are so many people that are older, beyond the 2-year requirement, that want to go to college, and some really can't afford it at that point, but they would like to. So they won't be able to use this scholarship.
Correct. That's why I say it only impacts about 20% of our students.
Right, so it'd be nice if some way we could figure it out to allow the older people to use it, because there's a maturity level there. And there's a lot of people that graduate from high school, they're not ready to go to college, but they will in the future, because they're not ready, they're not mature.
Yeah, there's a different type of readiness. There's the
Right.
academic readiness, and then there's the maturity.
Right. So, just something to think about in the future.
Definitely.
In your budgeting, there's talk about increases of maybe up to 30% of healthcare plans?
Right.
Whether it's
Our
PPO
hit,
or
our hit was
HMO?
last year. Your hit is coming this year.
Okay, so you don't anticipate that impacting you this year?
No, we don't.
Okay.
We've adjusted for it. We made that adjustment this past year
Right.
with your support, thank you.
Right.
And
Stabilized?
we stabilized, yeah. For
Stabilized.
whatever reason, I think it's the best term to use, because frankly, I mean, it's a crapshoot with healthcare costs these days, and it does keep escalating, but with this budget, we feel very confident that we're in good shape.
So on that, I know you had to spike up, due to
Yeah.
individual circumstances or whatever. Did that spike up and plateau, or did it spike up and go back down?
No, it plateaued, it didn't
Okay.
go down. No. No, I'd like to see it go
More
down.
people on it.
Yeah, no, that's the part of it. Our costs went up, but we had people add into the plan. So it doesn't really generate, you think that would generate that much more revenue, but it doesn't generate enough revenue. We're on the hook for the first $110,000 because we're self-insured. After that, we have reinsurance that kicks in. So for every employee, we're on the hook for 110. We can absorb 4 employees hitting that amount, the way we budget. If a 5th employee hits that amount, we're in trouble. And then obviously everybody else, we use actuaries to come in and they do analyses and say, okay, at this level, you can fund here. Our costs are still lower than the county cost per employee and the school board cost per employee, even with our plan. We absorb the spike, but the spike, as you say, has plateaued, and we're going to live with it for a while.
I know I've asked you this before, but I've forgotten. So
Maybe I'll forget the answer. That's probably better. You forgot what I said.
it'll be new for both of us. So,
Just throw something out there, what the heck?
does your healthcare plan kind of mirror the counties where you offer post-retirement healthcare benefits, or not?
We do have OPEB, and we're fully funded, by the way, with our OPEB. It's a little different. People earn their accessibility to our OPEB plan after, you know better than I. Go ahead.
They have to be eligible for Maryland State Retirement, but they're not eligible for benefits under the state retirement system, so it's our own retirement plan. And they have to either be age 65 with 15 years of service, or age 62 with 20 years of service, or 30 years at any age. And then for each level, they get a percentage. So I believe at age 65, we pay for 40% of the premium, and then it goes to 50, 60, and then at any age, it would be 70% of that premium. And then after 65, there's a supplemental plan that we have as well, but that does not affect our medical
Rates.
utilization rating for our self-insured plan for employees.
So we're able to move them off of our plan into the supplemental to keep it from affecting our cost.
What health insurance do you use?
Well, we use Integra as our administrative entity, and then we're using, is it United Healthcare at this point?
United Health.
But they shop our plan every year. And we have a plan design that we shop, and we see who's got the best rates and who's willing to give us a good rate on
I was
this
just
thing.
wondering if you got in the consortium with the county, city, and the Board of Ed, if
We
that would
looked.
help.
Does not.
Doesn't help?
No, actually, it'll cost us more.
Wow.
Maybe we should copy yours.
Yeah. Well, we were with you all when you were with Blue Cross Blue Shield. And what happened was they started rating us, when we were all able to be rated together, we had a much larger pool, and it was working out very well. But then things changed, and the rating system changed, and we had to be individually rated for utilization, and we had some high utilization during that particular period of time. So we moved over to Legit, Local Government Insurance Trust, when they had their program. Of course, their program failed after a few years, didn't seem to make it, and at that point, we transitioned to this self-insurance mode that's worked very well for us until it didn't. But even then, it's still better than the options.
If you look at the averages, we've still saved money over the course
Oh,
of
gosh.
however long we've been with them.
Yeah, we saved a great deal of money and had a very rich plan. But the OPEB portion of our plan is very different from what the counties and school systems and all are doing, and the state does. It's not quite as rich as those plans.
Any questions? Any other? What, you'd said that Worcester was $8, an impact on the student. What is Somerset?
No impact, because Somerset has that unique relationship.
Okay,
So whatever the lower tuition county is what Somerset goes with,
okay,
because that's the standard. The other one is an upcharge.
okay, okay.
So, and the state pays half of Somerset's out-of-county tuition rate, and the county has to pay the other half of the out-of-county tuition rate. So the county funds each student at 50% of the out-of-county tuition level.
Okay.
Bill, one question. How is the state on reimbursement timeframe? I'm just picturing when the state program does kick in, and those kids are supposed to get reimbursed, or you're supposed to get reimbursed by the state for that tuition. Is there going to be a big lag time where you're going to need to forward fund and then
Sure
wait for
hope
that?
not.
Yeah.
There's no regulations, nothing's written into the law that suggests how that's going to be done.
Okay.
The Higher Education Commission is going to spend the next year trying to figure out how they're going to implement this.
Okay.
The other thing is, when you have a program that's half funded, how are they going to go about
Split that up.
allocating the
Sure.
dollars? Are they going to allocate it by district? No, I don't think so, because the bill's not written that way. So are they going to do it on most economic need after Pell? Perhaps. I just don't know.
Okay.
And the $5,000 is an interesting figure, because no community college tuition and fee rate's $5,000 for in-county tuition. So the bill allows people to go to colleges outside of their own district. And pay out, and this will pay their out-of-county tuition up to $5,000.
A portion of that. Okay.
You say it's only half funded. How do they know how many's going to want to take advantage
Well,
of it, or how
it's
many's
just-
going to be able to take advantage of it?
It's just an estimate. It's just an estimate.
So we don't know if it's half funded or three-quarter funded, really.
It's, as from the projections.
Projection.
Yeah, actually, the bill drafters came up with the projections and working with legislative services and other folks, and they came up with 30 million is what they felt was the need, but they established it at 15. So
So they'll know in a year or two whether they're right or wrong, right?
Yeah, and, a big concern I have is, it's gonna cost more in year 2 and year 3. You know that. So are they thinking about that? Is this the camel's nose under the tent, and then we'll see it escalate to where it needs to be? I don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out. Will they throttle back the numbers in the first year so that there's monies available? But the money doesn't carry over, so it doesn't matter. But just so those people who come in the first year, so there's at least some room for people in the second year. I don't have any clue at this point. Very interesting, and
Yep.
I'd like to be involved in the process, but I'm not sure who will be.
Okay, any questions? Anything else?
I guess the only thing that I would add is that, and I know you're deliberating over this just like Worcester County is, if our budget isn't approved as submitted, if for example you chose not to fund the expenditure the appropriation, the full appropriation that we requested with the supplemental appropriation. If you give the board the expenditure authority so that they can then make the determination, do they want to raise tuition or those sorts of things, I hope you'll be able to do that. Because I know it's timing issue, obviously. You're going to approve the budget.
Can you repeat your?
Yeah, okay. Let me see if I can really be frank with this. So there's
So
four
we don't
options.
fund you, you want the permission to raise the tuition?
Yeah, essentially. So
I thought
what I want you to do.
You don't have that anyway?
Not really. You approve expenditure authority.
Mm-hmm.
So you approve our expenditures by function.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't approve our full expenditure
Mm-hmm.
on this, then we couldn't raise tuition to do that.
So you're asking for that?
So I'm asking you to approve our full expenditure authority, if nothing else.
Okay.
If you're not, I'd love to have your money, but if you're not willing to do that, at least give us the expenditure authority, and I'd ask Worcester for the same thing, and then we can make that determination.
I think you'd have to have an amended budget, wouldn't you?
No, the budget, because you don't have to approve our tuition, the board has
Oh,
exclusive authority over
The
tuition.
funding would stay the same, you
The
would just
funding,
internally would
the
just.
expenditures would stay the same.
But the
Exactly.
budget would have to reflect that to some certain extent.
Well, the budget, the only thing you have to approve, the only thing you have a right to approve is the expenditures. So if you give us that full expenditure authority, then the board has to figure out how to do it.
So I wasn't gonna ask this question.
But
Being you
can.
being you made that statement, I will. If we didn't approve the budget as submitted, would you push for a,
Increased tuition?
increased tuition? The full $6, you said $6 an hour?
$6 a credit hour would be the increase that we'd have to do
To make this,
that
to
up.
make this up, would you push for that?
I talked to the board about it. It's their it's their decision.
So I got to get straight this expenditure authority and the money issue, because this is about $213,000 from our budget that was submitted by the executive. So we can cut that amount of money from the budget, but then we'd still have to approve your budget with the expenditure authority. I mean, I guess that's for the lawyers to work out how we do. I mean, for me, it's, you cut it from the budget and it's cut, and then you guys do what you want, but apparently it's not. We need to do something a little bit different than that.
Yes.
To do that, okay, all right.
I think the executive would have to agree on that expenditure authority.
Okay, is that, I guess that's, you're highlighting that and letting us know that,
That's
if
an
we want
option.
to do that, yeah.
Yeah, it's an
that-
option.
That we need to figure out the legal part on our end, okay, all right, well, it's good you raised that then.
Does that change any commitment on the part of the board?
Say that again.
Does that change any commitment on the part of Wor-Wic as far as if you were increasing the tuition in Wicomico? Does that trigger any mechanism whereas Wor-Wic has to respond with their?
Oh,
students?
Worcester?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Worcester, yeah.
Well,
Sorry,
and
Worcester.
no, I meant if both counties don't do it. If one county does, then we do the tuition differential. If both
Right.
counties don't, but you approve the expenditure authority, then we would just increase tuition, or the board would say, okay, we got the expenditure authority, but we're not gonna spend it. If we had an influx of students, and frankly, summer enrollment, summer one's up 7.5%, summer two's up 14.3%.
Wow.
Going through the roof right now. So we budgeted for a flat. So if we have excess revenue that comes in from tuition receipts because of enrollment increases, we either can't spend that money, or we have expenditure authority and could use that to offset the difference.
Okay,
Mr. President, can I
Yes.
ask a question?
yes.
Your current budget rate now already includes a tuition increase, is that correct?
$2.
Of $2?
Yes.
Is that the maximum amount?
That's the maximum we can increase and receive the governor's $53,000 allocation.
Okay, so you're saying if this council decides not to fund, then you're going to increase over that $2 up to $6, is that correct? Or does that then exceed what
It's
you
six
can?
more.
So it'd be $8.
It's $8 overall, yes. It would
Okay,
be 6 more to make up the 300.
and that's permitted?
Well, anything's permitted. It's, we'd lose the state funding. The board has authority
Okay.
to set tuition.
Okay, so you
yes.
would lose the state funding?
We'd lose the state funding, but the 53,000 of state funding. Last year, they made it worth our while, it was 212,000. This year at 53,000, it's easier to make up, but you
I
know,
understand.
again, I look at it, what are our options? And we'd have to take it to, we have a board meeting in June, a week after the counties will make a determination, and then we'll ask the board what they want to do.
Thank you.
What council members are on the board?
Well, there's nobody's a board member. They're liaisons to the board, and it's the county executive from Wicomico and Chip Bertino from Worcester.
I thought the county council had a liaison.
It's a county liaison.
It's a county liaison.
Right,
I was
and-
thinking there was a member here.
Well, when Rick, yeah, Mark was.
Oh, he was.
When Rick was the executive, he was always the liaison. When Bob came in, Mark became the liaison for a while, and now Bob's the liaison.
Okay.
I was under the impression that Wor-Wic did not approve any increase in funding.
Or Worcester.
I mean Worcester, I keep saying. Worcester,
You're under the impression what?
that Worcester did not approve an increase in your funding for this fiscal year.
I don't think they've taken a vote on that, even though I had heard the same thing, but I talked directly with Harold Higgins, and it's yet to be determined in my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's.
Well, they actually vote on the same day you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
They vote on the budget the same day you do.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard several different things. Yeah, I know.
Anything else, Ray?
I have nothing else unless anybody has any questions.
Thanks. Good.
Thank you for your time and your attention, appreciate it. Appreciate all your support.
Enjoy your time off tomorrow.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Mr. President,
Yes.
we spoke to Mr. Strasburg about your earlier question on the salary for the state's attorney. And it's our understanding, maybe Laura knows a little bit more about this, that is a state formula that we do not have control over.
That we don't have what?
That the county itself doesn't have control over. It's a state formula that tells us what the salary is for the state's attorney. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with that formula, but I can do some research on it.
Okay. It has to do with the number of judges and some other factors that go into that, but we can get more detail on it. But
My only question, Mr. Rosa, was that if that is the true number, shouldn't that number be in the budget? Because it does go into effect July 1st. Maybe it's not a bad.
I can't disagree with that, but we'll get further clarification.
Okay, thank you.
We're supposed to go till noon.
I think the library is here if you want to continue on. Any discussions with Wor-Wic at this time?
Kind of have some thoughts, but I think we need to discuss it.
Recap.
Okay,
I think everything plays into the overall.
yes, okay. Laura, you might want to contact IT and tell them maybe a little earlier.
I'm gonna do a quick coffee break.
Okay.
Okay. We'll take a 5-minute recess if we could.